This episode of the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast has been brought to you by our sponsors at Sweet Cheetah Publicity. Sweet Cheetah is a PR collective that values people over profit. They put a different spin on public relations by working primarily with friends and using all profits to aid charitable organizations. With a roster that includes Jawbox, The New Amsterdams, Brainiac, Get Some, Funeral Date, Damian Dunn, and many more artists, record labels, and podcasts. Sweet Cheetah. That's a great PR cohort. You can find them on social media by simply searching Sweet Cheetah PR, and they'll be there. He's been Tim. I've been Peter, and Sweet Cheetah has been beautiful. Hello and welcome to the first edition of Season 3 of the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. I'm your host, Peter, and I am still here. And tonight, it's my pleasure, my honor, my duty to give to you Paul Fig and Christopher Lewis of the band Lewis. Their new album, Growing Pains, just dropped. The vinyl edition of it drops on October 31st, Halloween. Paul Fig comes from, the punk underground. He was in the Revelation Records band Bluebird. He was in Amen, that were produced by Ross Robinson and fronted by Casey Chaos. Paul is also a producer and engineer who does work and has been nominated for a Grammy for his work with Jerry Cantrell of Alice in Chains. Christopher Lewis was in groundbreaking, excellent band called The Kinnison. After The Kinnison, he took some time off, be a dad, things like that. Now, the two of them have come together to record this new album, start this new venture. This is their second record together. It is excellent. It is guitar-driven indie, I guess indie rock, I guess punk, I guess a little bit of all of the above. I know one thing. It sounds excellent. It's well written. It's very emotional. Lyrically, it is very confessional. This is a thinking man's emotional record. I don't consider it emo, but it is emotional, as all music should be. If you dig what we do, please like, rate, subscribe. Do all that fun stuff you're supposed to do when you like a podcast. It's the only plug I'm going to give you tonight. I don't want to give up the ghost. This episode is under our new banner. We have video. We're going the whole route now. We're going bigger than we've ever been before. I hope you enjoy it. Without further ado, I give to you Lewis, Chris, and Paul on the Book of Very, Very Bad Things podcast. Dig it. So I got to listen to the entirety of the new record, Growing Pains, it's called.
Yeah.
It is actually a bit different from the last one. I was very impressed. It had almost a mod kind of feel to it. Like Paul Weller was somewhere in the mix as far as influence in your sphere of influence. I could be way off, but I kind of got like a Style Council vibe.
Well, it's funny you say that because I've heard, we've let some people hear the record and like I've had a handful.
Oh no, we're frozen. Hello, Paul. Chris is frozen. I don't know what happened.
Uh-oh, he's out in Thousand Oaks.
Oh.
How you doing? How you doing, Peter?
I'm well. How are you, Paul?
I'm good.
We met a long time ago when you were in Bluebird.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I tried to interview you for the fanzine I'd been doing at the time, and it was outside of a show in either New York or Philadelphia. I can't remember which, but a fight had broken out, and we could no longer do an interview. It was quite a scene. Right around the time when Revelation put out your record on their label.
Okay. If it was New York, it must have been during CMJ, and we had just pulled our van and trailer in on Halloween night. It was an epic feat.
That sounds right. That sounds right. And CMJ was always a mess.
Yeah.
Christopher,
There he is.
Let's try this. I don't know. I'm on my computer all day, every day, doing Zoom meetings and Google chats, and it just wrapped out right now. So we're gonna go with the phone.
Hey, whatever works.
Yeah.
But I was just Christopher and I were in the middle of. I was talking about having just really listened to the record in its entirety, and I was telling him I'd gotten a lot of Paul Weller style council almost type vibes from it.
Yeah, we're pulling from between Chris and I. There's so many influences for both of us, and it's like Chris, comes with a song, and okay, well, what works here? What can we do to make something interesting instead of like, all right, I'm in my rock box. You can't knock me out of here. All the notes are good. So it's like just putting a lot of thought into things like that. But that's a huge compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a huge Paul Weller fan, so that is a big compliment coming from me.
Yeah, I've had a handful of people say it's like a Brit poppy, and I was like, oh, like that's not what that was not necessarily the intention. I can hear. I mean, I suppose I can hear, but that's not like what I had in mind. Like during the process of songwriting, but I mean that's a cool thing. I like Britpop, but that's not it's not the forefront of my influences.
Yeah,
and to be fair, I don't really consider anything Paul Weller did to be Britpop. I would say it's more proto punk and like almost boot boy glam adjacent.
Okay.
More than anything else. So, but I'm a nerd. So.
Yeah.
So, like, let's get into the meat of how this all came into being. Now, Paul, your brother, were you related to someone who was in the Kinnison? Because there's a Figaro who was in the Kinnison.
There is a Figaro that's in the Kinnison, and he is an amazing person. I wish I was related to him.
Okay. Because the synchronicity, I just figured maybe there was some sort of like through line there, but.
No, I was amazed, and then he has a cousin, another Figueroa. I think he's another Paul Fig.
He's a Paul Fig, yeah.
And we met, and totally, polar opposites.
Yes. Yeah, just so happy. Yeah, Frank Figueroa was in Kinnison for a while. He played on Mortgages Bank, that EP, and he played some big festivals with us. He did like This Ain't No Picnic, and he's still like an everyday best friend of ours. Like he's in our orbit daily. But no, there's no relation.
That's wild.
Just Los Angeles, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that could only happen in LA.
Yeah.
But so how did this all come into being? I mean, you both obviously come from like post-hardcore and punk backgrounds. How do you two kind of find each other and hatch this particular plan?
Well, if you want to start like way back at the beginning, I'm
in like 2000.
Yeah, it would have been like in the year 2000. The Kinnison had started. I'm from Central Illinois, and Kinnison started. It was just like you said, post-hardcore band, and we're from the middle of nowhere, literally in a town of 1,200 people. So I used to just print CDs. And then we would drive to like Chicago, or we drive to St. Louis, or drive to Indianapolis, and I just we just go see bands we liked and just hand out CDs and just say, check us out. So I went to go see Amen play. It's actually Sauget outside of St. Louis, and I gave Casey Chaos a CD, and I was like, hey, this is our demo. And maybe like 90 minutes later, or before Amen had played, we were watching the opener. I feel like someone grabbed my back, and it's Casey, and he's like, let's go to the fucking bus. I need to talk to you. And so that's actually where I met Paul, and I met our friend James and Casey, and then Bill Fold, who ended up being Kinnison's manager for our entire duration. So like, in that one meeting in the year 2000, I met like lifelong friends, all like in one, within a few minutes, I met people that I talk to still daily, and obviously Paul. So like that's the the genesis, like the beginning of how we initially met.
How does the music come to pass though? The partnership in what is now this group?
About 4 years ago, I hadn't done music for over a decade, and I had just met who's now my wife, and she like had seen some YouTube videos and heard some music and such, and I was like, maybe I should impress her, maybe I should write some songs. So I actually just booked some studio time with this engineer named Manny Nieto. He's done like Breeders. He's done some cool stuff, and I just booked some time. And essentially, it ended up being demos. And I recorded with him, and then he moved to Hawaii. And I need someone to mix. I did release it. It's not available now, but it really ultimately it was demos. And I called Paul, and I was like, "Hey, can you mix these?" And that's kind of how we got reconnected. We've hung out through the years, but not necessarily musically. And so he mixed that record, and then I remember as soon as those demos were kind of mixed, I was like, I think I want to do maybe another EP. I have all these songs, and he was like, no, let's just do a record. And then just you got the songs, man. You just did an EP. So then we decided like, well, why don't you produce and also engineer and then mix my full length, and that was Sun on the Floor. So Paul really produced everything. He found our drummer Sam, who Paul's known for years and years, decades, yeah. And he kind of got it all together, got the musicians together, and he has a studio in North Hollywood that's amazing, and called Dave's Room, which and so we recorded there. We did all on the floor, like a true rock and roll record. We're all just on the floor, not to a click, and Paul and I worked really well together, and we just we also know each other forever, like I said, and Sun on the Floor came out, and it was right in the middle of COVID and whatever, not much happened, but then I had like another 125 songs ready to go. And then we just kept talking about vision and ideas. And then I can't remember if Paul, you came to me, or if it was just like, why not be part of this?
Yeah, so, he's prepping to get Sun on the Floor released. The single comes out, George Floyd is murdered, and Black Lives Matter, and all this stuff just kind of, very important things started happening in the world. Yeah. And, but we were going to get, he couldn't find a guitar player to play live with. And I'm busy with, producing engineering career. And I'm like, you know what, now that the COVID thing and what, it's like, it was right before COVID. I was like, I'll learn these tunes, and I'll help you do showcases and play around town. And so I started learning the songs. And I'm like, man, these songs are uncomfortable to play. Like physically, the tempos are a little weird. It's like, Chris can play guitar, but he needed a guitar player. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to jump in there and just wrangle these things. So, because he's great at just like coming up with like, groovy, chord progressions and like fun melodies over the top, and like, just his lyrics, of choice, and then, so it's been, that was the fun process.
Yeah. Until it gets into the nuts and bolts, which happens to be your whole forte, right? Like
exactly. Yes.
Now, how did you come upon that trade? Is that something you went to school for? Or did you pick it up as a musician, seeing other producers, and the like while you recorded?
Yeah. So, so this is, when I was in Amen, we did our first record at Indigo Ranch, and then we ended up at Sound City because Casey couldn't, he wasn't a fan of the API mic pre's for whatever reason. And we ended up at Sound City because they had that Neve desk. Yeah. And it wasn't, it was like, oh, this is the Nirvana room, but it was still kind of low on the radar. And so we had done an EP there and a couple of B-sides, and I was becoming, friends with the staff and the manager, and we were doing our third record, the second record for Virgin, and that's when I quit the band. And I'm watching what they're doing, and I'm getting inspired, and I'm like, you know what, I really want to learn what's going on here and how this whole process works. You know, because back then they were still running tape machines, and that desk, that Neves desk at Sound City, it's not super flexible. It's like it's giant broad strokes. There's not a lot of flexibility, and you get what you get. Like whatever you perform is what you get.
I recorded on a Neve. They can be unforgiving, but they have a wonderful sound.
Yeah. And so that's where I made the jump. So I went from Virgin Records to the runner desk, and I just, you know, I knew there was kids behind me that would kill to sit in that seat to have that opportunity. So it was a humbling experience, and I just, you know, put my head down, kept my mouth shut, listened, read manuals, and just worked my ass off. And then, you know, then I think in 2006, Nick Raskulinecz came through and kind of swooped me out of there, and just I've been freelance ever since.
Nice. Now, Christopher, that whole time, there was a decade where you didn't do anything musically. What was that time spent doing exactly?
Being a father and alcoholic.
Yeah, I was thirsty too back then.
Yeah, but right after I quit Kinnison, I was in a band called Pioneers, and we did the LA circuit. But then it was a solid 10 years of just drinking, living in LA, trying to be a good dad, and, you know, just going a little wild, going nuts.
Yeah. You know, I think that's something most musicians go through, if not all. I don't know what it is about our breed exactly, but substances are just, they loom large on our horizons for some reason. Mm-hmm. I think there's now correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a modicum of instability to all musicians. There's that lust for like, hey, check me out, dig me, everybody, pay attention to me, look at me. And, you know, even playing on stage and getting that attention can oftentimes not be enough, and you need something to kind of quiet the noise. And I think that's where the drink and your pills, powders, and smokables come into play.
Sure.
So I'm guessing the two of you are both dried up at this point.
Well, yeah, you know. So speaking on that, yeah, it's like I kind of learned early on, like, hey, you know what? There's no reason to have an insecurity. It's like, hey, I'm doing what I love. I get to come up here and work. My work is to play on stage. Back in the Amen days, and then even in the Bluebird days, and even though we're playing to small clubs and half a crowd or whatever, but it's like, hey, you get up there and hey, you're the best you are, period, and nobody can take that away from you. And that's how I always see it. And it's like, you know what, I'm doing my thing, and if they don't like it, then they don't like it.
Yeah.
Period. So I can't apologize for my art.
Right. Right. I think I'm speaking to more of a something inherent in us, especially as small children.
Yeah.
What drove you to choose something that requires audience, that requires that sort of interaction? Like I said, I could be 100% off base, but it seems to me like the more fellow musicians I get to know over the years, the more the story kind of remains the same almost. Like there was just...
Well, like on a technical side, like I wanted to shred. Like when I first heard Eddie Van Halen, I mean, I grew up in my family ran a jazz club and I was surrounded by music my whole life. But, when I heard Van Halen's Eruption, I was like, my brain melted and I didn't know. I was like, what happened? And I'm like, I want to do that. And I was just totally enthralled with music, and I just wanted to play music. That's all I wanted to do. I can see, like, hey, wanting to have the attention, that was part of it. Yeah, I get it in the beginning, but after a while, it's like, you have to take a step back and see the big picture. And it's like, okay, hey, this is my job. It's like, I'm here to do a thing. And it takes you have to be very mature, I guess, to like see above and over that. Otherwise you get lost in the shuffle. I mean, like Casey did, he just drank his own Kool-Aid and just kind of imploded. That band doesn't exist any longer.
Yeah, I know. And over the years I've met Casey a few times, and he is a hell of a nice guy, but you can tell he was throwing himself completely into the Stygian.
Yeah.
and he was buying the lyrics that he'd written, you know.
Oh yeah.
And that's always a sad thing, but man, you know,
Yeah.
he kind of told us it was coming.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's like, how can I out Gigi Allen? It's like, well, you're not, because that guy took it to the end. Period. So, but you can't hum a Gigi Allen tune.
No, unless it's off of that country record and he's covering Warren Zevon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, so back to the music with this, it's like, hey, what can we do that, and I learned a lot from Cantrell, because I've been working on his records for the last, since 2008. And, just watching him boil down a riff or a melody or a flavor guitar line. And I'm like, okay, so all that's been sinking in this whole time. And I'm like, all right. So, Chris comes up with these groovy tunes, and, what can I do to help elevate and make them interesting and put depth and, like, put a cool melody or a counter melody to something. Mm-hmm. And I hope that he likes it.
I like it.
But that's the thing, right? Like when you find someone that speaks your language specifically in a writing duo or whatever, there's a shorthand to that, and that is very apparent in the finished product. Yeah. Hence, this new album, when people hear it, it is quite possibly one of the most melodic and well wrought in a pop sensibility records I've heard in quite a long time.
Thank you.
It sounds like you get it then.
Yeah.
It has that movement, right? There's no wasted space on it, and I appreciate that. And as much as I love bands that meander, I mean, I grew up on Pink Floyd. Mm-hmm. I like that there's no wasted space on this record. Yeah. Like from beginning to end, everything seems to be completely in order in a fun way, not in a regimented way.
Yeah. No, if it needed to be there, it needed to be there, and if it didn't, I don't think we built it out to have to cut out so much fat. But and at the same time, Chris leaves space in his vocals, because I guess the trend is now to fill up the whole song with vocals from beginning to end, and I'm not a fan of it right now. I'm like, can I rock out to the tune a little bit, or hear what the band's doing, or
I don't like that at all.
Yeah. Try to chew on the lyric you just said a few lyrics ago, but I forgot because there's more lyrics in my face. But there's that, and Chris does it. He's kind of a master at that.
I tend to agree, because would the Beatles have filled All You Need Is Love with just staccato lyrics? Boom, 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 boom. Like, no, that's not.
No,
that has zero sensibility. Yeah. It's it's oversaturation, and like that's cool if you're in a grindcore band.
Yeah. But so like this record, we want it to be fresh. Like right now, I'm not hearing anything like this. Yeah. It's either like full on, like they're digging deep into like 50s like doo-wop and Jaguars and really sparkly guitars, but like the alternative music scene, or like Japanese breakfast, it's all cool stuff, but it's I kind of like, I guess like the early 90s and through the 90s, whether it was Brit 90s music or not, that was kind of like a fun time, and music just kind of flourished for me right then. Yeah. Musically, it was kind of a cool time.
And we are of a certain age, so we're going to love that 88 through 96 era, because that's where we came up. But there was something special happening there, and I think it was a confluence of punk finally making itself into what one would consider the mainstream, and these disparate styles like all happening in a very compacted amount of time. It made it very interesting to watch it all kind of come to the fore.
Yeah.
I think that's happening again. I don't think it's quite happened, but I think it's bubbling.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people out there or other managers like, oh, 90, you guys have 90s things, like, that's really coming back. I'm like, really? Okay, cool.
I don't.
But it's not why we're doing it.
No, and I don't hear a decade attached to this.
Exactly.
Like, you know what I mean? Good music's good music is good music. That's just what it is, right?
Yeah.
But
you.
There's a passion that seems to be finding its way back into music now. I don't know what to blame that on, but I think we're due for another renaissance, another time when, like, remember back in the 90s, Revelation Records specifically, like, you had bands like Texas Is the Reason.
Yeah.
Like, they were signed to Virgin Records and imploded.
Yeah.
Otherwise they would have been pretty huge,
Yeah.
And these bands that were like indie rock bands, people called it emo, it was indie rock, it was whatever, but they were on their way up. Even Engine Kid was starting to get, some eyes on them. And that's what I'm seeing again. Not a sound, but a group of people really are bubbling up again, and that's exciting. I think something like this could conceivably be right at the head of that.
That'd be greght.
I'd
love to find more bands similar to us where we can play, because it's like, there's other alternative bands out there or indie bands, and they're either want to lean hard on the big heavy chorus and big sing-songy chorus, or and big fat guitars, like almost heavy metal. But it's hey, let's hang a left. Let's not follow everybody else. Let's do something cool and interesting.
And you see a lot of people ascribing to the whole post-punk thing too, and I like a lot of it. But that's, again, like, not to beat a dead horse, but what I usually expect as of late, especially with this show, when people come to me with bands, it's usually that, because I covered that a lot in like the first year almost of the podcast. Then I got away from it. So every time something comes down the pike that is not in that narrow space, it's very exciting for me. So if I seem like I'm beaming a little bit, it's because of that too.
Well, I guess this is our post-punk.
Right.
And my post-rock, because I was in Bluebird.
Yeah. Well, anything that happened after punk would be post-punk.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
If you want to But have you guys been playing out a lot or at all recently?
Yeah, we finally were able to play recently. We have some shows coming up, all in Los Angeles right now. But it's kind of strange when you take 10 years off and then you go back to your, to hit up your old venues you used to play, and it's a different promoter, different booker, and then you find out like, oh, Golden Voice owns this place or books this place now,
or it's Live Nation.
Or it's Live Nation.
Yeah, and you're like, hey, I thought like Sue booked this place. Like, I used to just show up and ask if we could play, and now it's like there's so many different hoops to jump through. So that landscape seems to shifted quite a bit. I know that there are some indie clubs and such. Like, we've been playing the Redwood in downtown LA, and that's just booked by a cool dude named Eddie. And so there are other spots, but it just seems like it's changed. It's like, it seems so much more corporate now. Like, to even play like the old clubs that I played 11 years ago, it's like it seems impossible to get in there now. I don't know. I mean, obviously money changed it, but
sure. But I mean, that's happened, I think, wholesale on the East Coast. It's the exact same way. And a lot of the clubs that, I grew up kind of flocking to, a lot of them, like the Trocadero's not even there anymore, like
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. It's owned by someone else now. And I don't even think they're doing like anything other than dance music. I'm not sure what the state of it is, but like the new spot in Philly is the Union Transfer.
Okay.
And that is corporate owned, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
It's sad to see, but I think all that's going to stand to do is to force independent music back into the VFW halls and you know, kids' basements. And I know that it's not glamorous, and you're playing like probably a 200 cap room at the largest with venues like that, shows like that, but that's what builds scenes. That's what you know.
No, you're exactly right. So, you know, like I'm trying to go see a potential client tomorrow at the Echoplex, and that is now a Live Nation venue. Mm-hmm. You can't call anybody and get tickets for that.
Yeah.
But the tickets that were $35 are now like $90 through their service, because somebody bought a bunch and are reselling them now. And I'm just like, well, what kid is going to pay $90 to go see the show? Yeah. I mean, you know, it's like, hey, $20, you know. I mean, back in the day, $20 was a lot, but
absolutely. I usually paid $3 or $4 to get into shows, you know, with a can of food.
Yeah, if you had $20, you got in and you got a couple of beers and you were stoked.
Yeah, and maybe a 7-inch if you were really lucky. But this will only strengthen the resolve of the musicians that really mean it.
Yeah.
Now that you are starting to play out, what are the crowds like? Even though the clubs are very strange, how do they feel right now to you?
I think because we're so brand new and they've not heard it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the last record was kind of a sleeper because we, you know, after Chris's press campaign, you know, it just couldn't break through all the massive news cycles that we're having. I mean, like, he has one of his demo songs that I was trying to get on the record, but I didn't make it. But Sleeping on the Floor, is that the one with the news on?
Sleeping with the news on, yeah.
Sleeping with the news on. And it was so true. Because, I mean, like, even though we were still trudging forward, trying to do work on more new music, we couldn't hammer that. We couldn't. There was no amount of money we could throw at this thing to make it pop through. Yeah. And so, you know, all right, well, let's move forward and start with some new songs. And so I think a lot of our friends and old fans who showed up were pleasantly surprised, because, like, wow, it's not Amen, Bluebird, or Kinnison. This is something totally different. But at the same time, you know, they're watching Chris crack open out of a shell and like expose himself lyrically and melodically, you know, taking people on this journey, you know, live, and it's pretty exciting.
Especially considering the lyrical content seems intensely personal to me. Where's all that coming from for you, Chris?
I write a lot. I'm constantly writing, and like throughout the day, I'll just take a word or an idea and I'll throw it into like my memo app. And, you know, I have thousands of ideas, and generally what happens is I'll write a song pretty quickly, and I'll do like mumble lyrics.
Sure.
And that's just kind of the way it lives for a little bit. And then you start extrapolating, like, oh, when it was 11 o'clock at night, what did I mean when I said that? Well, like it came from somewhere, right? Then you can start honing in and build a story around that, and then, you know, build an idea. And yeah, it is personal, like you said. But when I write lyrics, I don't write in jest, but they're also like, I'm kind of poking fun at myself. Like the first song on the record is Bridge Burner. You know, I had to fight Paul. I didn't really want that song on the record. And he's like, no, you have to understand, is like, you're so vulnerable. Like when you wrote this song, it's like, I'm making fun of myself. I'm exposing like how big of a fucking asshole I was, like, you know, at one point in my life. And I'm like, hey, I'm back, and I acknowledge Like, I was probably not a very good person, and it is vulnerable. But I can also laugh about it, and maybe some other people can laugh as well. You know, it's you know, I'm like, I literally, like, the first song, you know, is "I Burned Every Bridge." You know, and I name all these places that the bridges I burnt as I was going to.
Yeah.
You know, and when I wrote that song, it was supposed to be just kind of funny, and yeah, you know, just kind of, it is what it is. But then when you have someone like Paul as your partner who says, like, hey, this is important, that it's nice to have someone help hone in on those. You know, like I said, I write so much, and then there's like, pretty much the lyrics are done, and then Paul and I start working on it, and the cream rises at the top, and he'll kind of help show, like, this is important, and when you say this line, like, you know, we'll argue. I'm like, I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that line, man. When I wrote that, and then they'll be like, no, you need to say it because of this, because this is important. There's an authenticity, and I feel it's kind of cringy to say that, but I go out on a wing, and I'm okay being myself and talking about myself, and kind of and exposing that I'm flawed. I'm very flawed, and I've made so many mistakes, and that's why ultimately I call the record "Growing Pains." Yeah,
That makes sense. And you know, going back to what I'd said before about musicians being very flawed people, a lot of us anyway. Maybe a lot of us, a lot of songwriters, a lot of lyricists tend to sort of cloak these sorts of emotions in allegory, or better yet, in just almost garbled, incoherent nonsense. I'm not going to name any names, but there's a lot of them out there. And
sure.
What I found kind of unique about this as well is the fact that it is almost confessional and drawing from a very deep well of sadness in a lot of spots on the record. You just lay this bare, and you have no misgivings about it whatsoever.
Paul will sometimes text me, "Hey, are you okay?" I'm checking in. Hey, I heard that demo. What happens is, like, I'll record a demo, I put them in a cloud that we share, you know, and then I'll get a random text. "Hey, I stumbled upon that song. You doing okay? That's pretty dark."
Yeah, it is heavy, dark. Hey, you know, you reach out, I'm here.
yeah. I care about you, man. Just want to let you know. But I think you hit it on the head, which is honestly, Peter, it feels good to know that it did resonate with you, that you did catch on to that, because I did put myself out there, and by with the push of Paul. So you hit it on the head. You're right. Is that it is confessional. It is authentic, and I'm telling stories about myself and kind of making fun of myself, and saying, yeah, here I am. Like, take it or leave it. I'd rather you take it, but if you leave it, that's okay too.
Like, that was the goal with, you know, while recording his vocals, because, you know, hey, he could sing the lyrics, but I need to be able to buy it.
Right.
And if I'm buying it, hopefully everybody else is, because it's touching me, and it's, you know, it's striking a chord. And I'm like, all right, we got that spot, and then continue. But pretty much that way through the whole record.
And I think you of anyone, Paul, would know if it was just merely performative versus something truly authentic, having been in your vocation and dealing with all of these different personalities.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I'm quite sure you've come across more than a few, how do I put it, disingenuous.
Yeah. So, yeah, because you can get those singers who are technically amazing, and they're singing words, and they're being very technical about it, and, you know, that's great. But you got to dig deeper, and you know, I don't want, hey, even though there's some vulnerability shining in there, I want to hear if it's joyful, I want to hear the joy. If it's painful, I want to hear the pain. And that's, just part of my job is capturing those things and being able to hear that and decipher it, I guess, and make sure that hey, this is above the bar. We're good. Yeah. We got above the emotional bar.
And since you also work with the one and only Jerry Cantrell, I mean, my God, now that seems to me like someone who is very authentic.
Yes.
Especially considering I've been a massive fan since Facelift came out.
Same
way
here.
Back in, 89?
Yeah.
But there's a unique darkness to everything he's done, whether it's on his own or Alice in Chains. And I think this, for all of its like almost mellifluous pop sensibility and song structure, there is that very deep thread throughout the entirety of it of just pitch black Stygian human darkness that you seem to be beating back with the music. And that dichotomy, that yin and yang, is, I think, what also makes this so very attractive. So is that something you've actually considered up until this point? Or
well, because there's some definite valleys in this record, and then we got to like the record cruises in from Bridge Burner, right? And then you go into this next tune, which is kind of kicking the door open and letting you know where Chris is at, because it wasn't that first song.
Yeah,
that's like hey, I'm on the lazy river and I'm cruising through, and it's kind of it's dark and funny and sad, and then you get to this next song, and then you get to I'm Not Cursed, and then all of a sudden it changes. But there's still, even though the music is happy and fun, you're right, and you got this like, hey, well, I don't want to be cursed again, yeah, and then all the way up to the end of that first side of the record, you don't have vinyl yet, but it ends with Trouble, and then it starts on the next side with The Outside.
And so is vinyl something that is in the foreseeable future for this?
Absolutely. We've been working hard on this.
Yeah.
If you haven't noticed, I'm kind of a fan.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I am too. And it's like, and I go to these shows and I pick up, if an artist I'm seeing has vinyl, I'll pick that up because, one, it's great to look at. They put a lot of time and energy to create it. It's, they don't have a massive record label. This is like coming out of their pocket or their small indie label's pocket just to provide the vinyl. And, so it's something special, and it's going to last for a while. I guess CDs are making a comeback too, but they're smaller, and, I've got a CD player. It's not as fun, but being able to flip that record back over, like, hey, this is your 22 minutes or 20 minutes, flip it over, and there's the other side. And it's, we designed the record to do that.
Yeah, and not to mention, CDs didn't exist when I was a kid, period.
Oh, yeah.
I had records and 8-tracks, and 8-tracks sucked.
And cassettes.
Yeah, and cassettes, yeah. But 8-tracks sounded like garbage, and it always came down to my dad's Stones and Doors records, and T-Rex records. And
there you go.
Oh my gosh,
my first love was Mark Bolan and T-Rex.
Oh wow.
Oh my God, I love Mark Bolan so much.
Yeah.
That's my dude.
Yeah.
And Electric Warrior wasn't the first one I listened to or the first one I fell in love with. It was The Slider.
Oh wow.
Really?
Okay.
Yeah. That was it was my dad's favorite record by them. And he's like, here, check this out. You like the Stones, you like the Doors, you'll like this. And boy, did I fucking love that record.
Yeah. A tidbit about Mark Bolan I always loved is that, he wrote a lot of songs about cars and Jeepster, and he died in a car accident, but never had a driver's license.
Never ever.
And I always thought that never.
I don't even think he was driving. Yeah. He was a passenger, right?
He wasn't. Yeah. He was a passenger. Yeah, but never had a driver's license. And he was like 5'4" or something. It was
he was tiny. Yeah. I met his son. His son's cool as hell. Roland.
Oh yeah, he was doing things in LA when was that? It was like the mid '90s. He was doing shows around town for a while.
He's great.
Yeah,
he's great. I also unfortunately got to see Mickey Finn playing with
Yeah.
T-Rex, and that really hurt every
Oh yeah.
everything, every part of my soul and spirit.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know, I was never gonna get to see T-Rex
Yeah.
anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
but
You know, he does the phrasing, that Metal Guru phrasing. You're like, this should not fit, and somehow it does.
it's falling
It's
apart.
so
It's falling
good.
apart in front of your eyes. But still,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
it's no wonder Bowie worshipped the ground the man walked on, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of Bowie, I mean, what a way to go out. Black Star.
Oh man. And he knew he was dying. That was the
Yeah.
other thing. That's an epic record.
I can't say enough good things
Yeah.
about it. And
Yeah.
man, that broke my heart. In a big way.
Yeah, no, me and my wife, when we heard, it was like, all of a sudden she reads the news thing, and we just looked at each other, we both welled up, and it was just like, wow, this is what that day looks like.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And it trumped for me when Joe Strummer died, because
Oh, yeah.
my first concert was The Who with the Clash opening. My dad
Oh,
attended me
wow.
when I was very young. Yeah.
Wow.
And you know, I just always adored the Clash, and I always adored Johnny Cash. When they died, I was obviously struck with
Yeah.
a lot of emotion, but for some reason when Bowie died, it hit me in a different way, probably because of my age.
Maybe. And he did, there were so many different eras of Bowie that they're all great. You're just like, how did he come up with all of that stuff?
Yeah.
But I don't know if you caught it on Milkman. There's a little ode to Bowie in that song.
Yeah, I didn't quite catch it, but
Yeah.
now that I know, I'm going to certainly re-listen.
Okay.
But man, there's so many disparate kind of musical touchstones for you guys, but
Yeah.
you both came from the punk thing. So I have to ask, where does that figure into your lives when you were kids, when you were first getting into the music? What was it that, you know, what was the band, the song, whatever that got
Into
to you
punk?
the way, you know, seeing the Clash bit
Yeah.
me.
I was more of like, I grew up like on Billy Joel and Elton John. that was my thing. My first memory of being alive was being 2.5, laying on like at my grandmother's, you know, trailer park in her trailer home, like flipping over vinyl Billy Joel like a, you know, Piano Man or something. I didn't really get, you know, I'm from the middle of nowhere, like I said earlier, and punk, man. I mean, we were into At the Drive-In and Refused and those types of bands, but it didn't come until late. Like, yeah, I grew up on my punk was Bikini Kill and Nirvana and, you know, Screaming Trees and like that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I didn't like, you know, I missed the Clash and I missed those types of bands. And I'm also a little younger, but
Yeah, but what you're talking about here is just as valid.
Yeah.
You
Sure.
understand that, right?
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
Nirvana and the Screaming Trees and Bikini
Mhm.
Kill, they all came from that.
Yeah.
It's not a contest.
Sure.
It's just I'm more curious about, you know, what was that first taste, that first, you know, that screamed to you, this is what I want. This is me.
Yeah, I guess
Probably
it-
Nirvana. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then
Paul.
for me was, you know, like I said, I came, like, the whole catalyst for me jumping into music was Van Halen. You know, just I wanted to destroy my guitar, and then you know, then I, you know, I was joining this like Bowie Bauhaus band, and you know, then he turned me on to you know, Bowie and Iggy and Susie and Love and Rockets and Bauhaus, and I was like, wow. Then, you know, then Daniel Lass was one of my heroes, and then I got turned on to Bad Brains,
Yeah.
and then I was just like, oh man, you know, and then you know, that band ended up doing shows with HR, and we were doing Bad Brains covers for him, so he could, you know, couldn't get his band from the East Coast to the West Coast, so who were we going to get to play the, you know, backyard party in San Pedro? It's like, hey, they give those guys a call and get out there and do it. But I would say that, and then after that it was, you know, I toured with HR for a little bit, and then I joined Amen like maybe a year and a half later. And then that was like streamlined hardcore stuff in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You toured with a man who I would probably consider a hero. HR is so very important to me. Every time I met him, I met a different guy.
Yes.
But that's not his fault either.
Mm-hmm.
He has some issues, but
I hope he's doing okay because he just canceled a string of dates.
Yeah,
I keep tabs on him.
His partner posted something. I think he's getting the headaches again.
Mm-hmm.
I hope he's all right though, because
the
world still needs him. I think he's a conduit. There's something.
Yeah, I mean, like, you find that old footage of him live at CBGB's or out on stage somewhere. It's insane the amount of energy that guy's just throwing across, and he means every word of it. It's just like, what a crusher.
First time I saw the Bad Brains was on the Quickness tour, and a lot of people, older heads, always said to me, like, well, you didn't really see the Bad Brains. I was like, motherfucker, I saw my Bad Brain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
no, I'm with you, because I think we're about the same age. And they showed up at the country club, and it wasn't Paul Hudson, I don't think, on drums for that tour.
No, that was Mackie from the Chromats.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that record had a totally different feel. So, from Eye Against Eye to that record, I appreciated both, because there's still that metalhead in me, from the Shredder days, and so I totally got it.
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking about the band that invented hardcore, so they could do whatever they wanted, and it was. What are you going to say to them? They invented the form. It's them.
Yeah.
But and going back to that for the both of you too, that time period where punk kind of entered your life. I mean, for you, Chris, I mean, Nirvana was at least available, but then you started digging, right?
Totally.
You started digging.
Yeah. The closest record store was 90 minutes or so from our place. So, on a Saturday or whatever, we would need to go buy guitar strings. We go to the record shop and shuffle through vinyl and whatever. But nothing was that close. I mean, obviously, I was, 10 or something when Kurt died. So I caught the tail end. But, I was kind of a little younger. But then, we would hear Refuse is going to be in St. Louis, or and so that and you start looking at the roster of Epitaph or Fearless or whatever, and you start hopping on records. But punk came a little late, and I lumped in Amen into that, which is
Amen was a punk band.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Totally.
There's that misfortune, I guess you could call it, of being, associated with Ross Robinson.
Yes.
That people look down upon, even when at the drive-in recorded with Ross. And I never fully understood that, because sure, he produced some new metal records, but he also produced Glassjaw's probably greatest album. He produced At the Drive. He produced all these great bands. You're going to still be mad at him for Limp Bizkit after all these years? Come on, guys. he produced a Cure album.
Yeah,
Leave the guy alone.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, poor Ross. Well, he's doing fine.
Yeah, he's just fine. He'll be okay.
I see him at the farmer's market sometimes.
For real?
Yeah. It's maybe 7 or 8 years ago. I was on Venice Beach. I was just walking down, and I had some family in town, and something hit me. I was like, oh my God, I've been here before. And I look up, and I was like, I've partied inside this house before. I know the person that lives here. And then I swear to God, Ross just turns the corner with his dog, and he's like, Chris, I was just thinking about you. I'm like, that's so weird. It was like lightning struck me. I've been here before. I've lived this life before. And I was at Ross's house, and there he was. And then I had to explain to the family, this guy, trust me, you've heard his records. Without a doubt, you've heard many of his records.
Like, and I think I missed out on. I should have moved to the West Coast with my uncle when I was a teenager when I had the chance, but I just wanted to go to New York so badly.
I don't know, New York. That's kind of a spot.
Yeah, especially when I graduated high school. I was 17 years old, and I had the chance to go to NYU. So it's 1993, and I'm a hardcore kid. So I'm going to New York. That's it. No, boy, what a mistake that was. God damn it. If I could take anything back. But the positive end of that was I got to experience kind of a rebirth of a style on one end of it, and on the other end, I got to witness bands like Orange 9mm and Quicksand and Into Another really start to change the face of that music and make it artistic again.
And Snapcase too back then.
Snapcase, yes, absolutely. Yeah. They were from Buffalo, but still, like, that's when it stopped being meathead, tough guy stuff and started to become art again.
Yes.
I think when Amen started, that was kind of the school you guys were coming from a little bit. Maybe not
the meathead.
No. More of like the revisionist end of punk. You were trying to, kind of. You were by the, maybe as you'd called it, like a more stringent punk band in the beginning, but as your recorded content started to come into the world, it became, more sonically divergent. And that was what I appreciated the most about Amen. It didn't buy in. You know what I mean? No,
not at all. And that was a cool thing. Ross would always, he's constantly pushing for us to get on the edge of that envelope and push. I was working with some artists recently, and I'm like, hey, let's do this and that, and it's like, they couldn't pull themselves away from, well, no, the chords go here and here and here, and they need to be in time, and it's like, and I did some of this with Chris on his first record, and I'm like, I would just turn around, he's playing his part, and I would just take like the flashlight or a battery and just like scrub it across the strings, and like he's like, what's happening, like, and it ended up on the record because all of a sudden there was this thing you can't. It's not composition. It's just it's an emotion, a vibe, and a thing. Something's falling apart on your instrument, and it's kind of cool every now and again.
Yeah, because you're painting with sound at that point.
Exactly.
It's almost collage, and that's fun. There's an element of fun really comes through here, and I often wonder what is it that still drives, like, Chris, you're not as old as us, and I'm not trying to exclude you at all.
No.
But Paul, like, we're both men of a certain age. What is it that still keeps you here, making music and contributing?
You know what? So, while I'm since leaving Amen and joining Bluebird and I'm leaving that behind and working in the studio, I do film and TV music with Brian Brown from Bluebird, and it's great and it keeps me creative. And I've been playing this whole time, just not live with anybody. And so when we started putting this record together and I sat in a room with the drummer and started playing these songs live with him, I forgot. That's a totally different thing. When you're just communicating with your instrument with one person, 2, 3 other people, and you're making the sound, I forgot what a complete joy that is. And I love it. And I don't want to stop doing that. It's like, why did I stop doing that?
Yeah, because you're evangelizing something.
Yeah, and so it's like, well, you know what? I've got time to do that. It's like my work isn't so like, I'm working, 9 to midnight every day. It's like, no, I've got time to put into something like this and keep myself happy. So I think that's kind of the, hey, do I want to like get a day job and like just work 9 to 5 and just, after they tear all my energy out, muster up a little bit more to go to rehearsal? No, I don't want to do that. I want to create the life I want to live, and I'm doing it, and this is part of it.
That's I'm inspired now because I work a 9 to 5 job and then carve out time to go to band practice and do a podcast, and I have a lot of irons in the fire.
Yeah. You got it. I mean, like if I'm not mixing, I'm trying to, my gig, like my job is finding my next job, right? So, you know, I just finished mixing this, turned part of this rig off already. But, you know, I'm working on, you know, stuff with Chris. We got to sign off on artwork and CDs and DDPs and all this weird stuff that part of the manufacturing side I've never had to deal with. But, you know, I'm lucky in that way that my career affords me time to do things like this, you know, and, or, you know, especially, and composing too, because that takes up time as well. But you're not in a room with a person. Like, you know, I'll capture drums and I go home and we whip up like whatever the scenes are. It's not live.
Yeah. Yeah. So like
it's never like, gonna be live.
Yeah. And it's almost like two different jobs completely, which is neat. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. So Chris, on your end then, like what is your day to day that kind of like affords all of this extra, you know, music and whatnot?
I mean, like, what do I do?
Yeah.
My day job is also a 9 to 5. I work for a software company, but I work for like a company that we're fully remote, and like that's the gig, is that everyone is remote and the hours really aren't set. And it's one of those companies where it's like, the work gets done, it's all good. So that affords me to have so much liberty and autonomy. And, you know, like we can take as much vacation time as we need or take days off, whatever, to work. You know, I'm in the room I work in, and, you know, I write songs while at work, you know, and a lot of people in my company are also musicians. And some actually do what Paul does and writes, you know, they write for commercials and such. So it's a really cool culture, and we're all spread out. Like we're kind of worldwide, you know. So there's tons of autonomy. Like it's not a 9 to 5. I mean, it is, but there are no set hours. But that, you know, allows me to, you know, cut out at 2:00 and go do vocals at Paul's house, or, you know, or, you know, if we got to set up, we got to load in at a certain time. It doesn't matter. It's really helpful. It's like, it's one of those companies that, you know, like you hear about companies that are cool. It's like, no, my company's actually, they're pretty relaxed.
I hate you guys right now. I do plumbing and heating. I have to be there, slug wrenches all day. But you know, there's I have to say this before I forget it, Chris. There's something so very magnetic about just the way you present yourself. You're very animated, excited. Is that your stage persona as well? Like, is that not persona, but is that how you carry yourself on stage as well?
Yeah, I would. You said it very nicely. I would say most people say I'm annoying, and that I'm I'm excitable, and that I'm like, my whole life I've heard like, you're grinding on me like so much. Like you can only take me in certain doses before, and then, you know, I've gotten better at realizing like, I'm probably grinding on that person. I should probably take a step back. You know, like, well, with Lewis, you know, it's rock, and we do rock out, we do express ourselves, but the you know, singing the song is more important than ever. Like hitting the notes are important to me now. Playing the song on guitar is correctly as important. Like in Kinnison, it wasn't like that.
Oh, I know.
It was like, yeah. It was like, let's bum everyone out, and there's a possibility that we're going to break up after every single show, you know? And we were road dogs too. We would do like 300 shows, 350 shows a year. And it was like, at any moment, we may not make it to the next show. Not because we physically couldn't get it, it's because we were about to break up. Probably something I did on stage, or something the guitarist did on stage, like something, you know, like we had to have a band meeting just about every few days. Like, hey, when my family's in town, can you not jump up on the bar and drink keg beer like in the middle of the show, like, whatever it is, but I've always like I've been performing my whole life. When I was like 3, 4, 5 years old, I would perform as a break dancer. Like my mom would drive. Yeah, my mom would drive me to like people would hire me. They give my mom like, hey, give him $50, and I'd put down cardboard or whatever. I'd bring my own stereo and I'd break dance. So I was like a dancer, and then I would put on my own shows. So I've been performing like my whole life. I'm super natural at being on stage in front of people. In fact, it's probably anxiety manifests itself like what you're probably seeing is like anxiety. That's like the way I am now is the way I am with my wife. That's just who I am. But it's probably manifests as anxiety. But when I get up on stage, it just feels so normal. Yeah. And it feels natural. And we played recently, and I remember looking back at the drummer Sam, and we started the first song, and the next thing I remembered is I'm wrapping my cables up. Like it felt like 10 seconds long. Yeah, it felt like, did we even play? What happened? So I guess ultimately what you're picking up is probably just like lots of anxiety and just a ball of that, and it expresses itself.
I'm recognizing our similarity is all.
Sure, got it.
Because that's
symbiotic, symbiotic.
Very much so, because that song "Excitable Boy" by Warren Zevon. That with the exception of the whole raping and killing women thing, in the body of it, like that's very much what I was like as a child, and it was always a production. I was always on. I was always on, and I was very self-deluded too, because when you're a wacky, precocious young man, that's usually the way it goes. Yeah. But I recognize that in you, but it's like it's very magnetic. You were born to be the front man of a band. I mean, it's just what it is.
That's kind of you to say.
That's
nicer than I've heard. That's a nicer way to put it than what I've heard most of my life.
But that's what it takes. Yeah. That's truly what it takes to be, a command presence. Mm-hmm. If you want people to pay attention to you, you have to have an extreme personality. It's just what it is. It's part of the gig.
Yeah.
So it's a gift, whether you or anyone in your orbit realize it or not. It's very much what is necessary to be an effective.
Thank you, Peter.
Singer. Absolutely. So, guys, I only have one pre-written question that I ask everyone. I always shoot from the hip, and as you can see, I'm very unorganized here, but I always ask everyone the same thing, and it seems trite, but this is what it is. I ask everyone this: what is it that terrifies you on an existential level? I ask this because what you fear is normally what drives your personality. Hence why I ask it. So I will posit that to you, gentlemen.
Of failing to act. Because hey, Chris Lewis and I could have been like talking about this record and this music the whole time, but if we never acted, then you don't do anything. You fail. And this, with everything, for me, especially in my career, it's like if I don't reach out and I'm not hungry or interested in creating or tweaking something with somebody, then I'm failing and I don't exist. That makes sense?
Very much so. Very much so. How about you, Chris?
Existential fear is my default setting. That's that's just the gear I'm in at all times. And the fear generally is what is next, and what is the point? Like what is the point of all of this?
See, that's the exciting part for me.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, what's next? What door is going to open now? I guess I'm the optimist.
That's the dynamic of the music, though, right there. I found it.
Yeah,
I found it.
yeah.
That's the yin and the yang. That's the happy
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the intense. This is
Mhm.
a perfect union between you two gentlemen. I swear to God, it makes total sense. But Chris, continue. I'm sorry.
That's true. That's true because I'm always piling up ideas and songs and nervous and like worried about. Actually, it does make sense though you said, because I'm not so worried about living in the moment. I never live in the moment. It's just not what scratches my back. But I'm always like, oh my God, am I gonna be able to, make another record? Am I gonna live where I live now? Like, what's gonna happen when my kids go to college? I'm always just like in the trenches of like, what the fuck is next? Like, what's the point and what is next? And you're right. I think Paul kind of grabs me, kind of pulls me in and says, like, you got to live in the now. You got to focus on this now. And I'm like, no, I want to talk about the 25 songs I wrote last week. Let's talk about that. Like, we'll get to that, man. You need to relax. You have no idea how many times he has to tell me. Literally, he'll say, like, relax. Settle
Or breathe.
Breathe. Yes, he tells me to breathe all the time. Like, I forget.
It's true.
Breathe. I'll rattle off a text to him like, this long, this and this and this is going on. Oh my God! And then breathe. It's okay. Relax. You're all right.
So this whole thing, this is self-directed, self-released, all on you guys, right?
Yes. Yep.
Now,
We were looking for management, but I guess we just need to do the work ourselves. And then hopefully that'll iron itself out.
because I was going to say, there's really, like, in this day and age, a record label is only a recipe for going broke. And
Yeah.
I think you've both been on labels. You both know that game.
Mm-hmm.
What's the upside in 2023 to being signed to a record label at this point?
I don't know, because you have to create your own marketing already. So what do you need the label for? And if you can come up with the money to press your first release, then you don't have to take the $1.25 from the label per record.
Yeah.
You can take all of it.
Yeah, you have to pay all that back.
Yeah. So
Especially in the era of the 360 deal.
Oh yeah. So
oh my gosh, yeah.
So we've got a lot of work to do. We've got shows to play, we've got places to go, and we've got records to, hopefully, get in people's ears. And, I'm not afraid. And, I believe in this record, and I think it's super fun. And Chris did a spectacular job, with writing and delivering his vocals and writing his lyrics. And I think it's an important record for right now.
It absolutely is. And dare I say, a spiritual record. And I don't know where you guys lie in the spiritual realm, but to me, there is an essence of something, an otherness, or a reaching out into that ether, trying to find something. This record, it seems to be seeking, if that makes sense.
It definitely wants to connect. It's not just there to show off a technical ability, because you'll notice there's not much of that going on. It's like if there's a guitar solo, it's so boiled down, like anybody can learn it, anybody can play it. It's all about connecting and picking the right note that's going to, like, pull you the right direction to where we want you to go. And I think that's what you're hearing, and it's like and it's a human thing. It's like we're trying to connect. We're not just, hey, check out, we whipped up these beats and things on my laptop, and it's, how much more longer can we listen to that? Then you have an inspired vocal come up at the top, but most of the time it's very repetitive and not very inspired.
Yeah, it seems to me, with speaking to that, people making, computer-based music, no one's quite doing it the way, Ministry and Nine Inch Nails were doing it.
No, well, they were looping or sampling things and performing it off of keyboards or creating a sequence and then pushing off of that. But then that was back in the tape days.
Yeah.
When it was even harder.
Tape loops were very difficult. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. So, and then just firing off like inhuman sounds, for your snare and your kick and that was the exciting part, because it was like, wow, what is this? Then you go see them live, and then it's it's more triggers, but that was an exciting time. But now it's not so much. It's like because I do film and TV compositions, I hear where a lot of these sounds come from when I watch a show, and now it just makes it sound cheap, because that plug-in bundle isn't very expensive. I mean, it's expensive, but it's it's not like owning a recording studio. So I'm like, okay, well, then I could, when it's a really talented composer, I'm like, all right, my ears perk up. But when it's just, I'm like, all right, that's the stock thing, that's the pad, that's the this, and I'm like, all right, well, so I don't know if you ever did this, like, I have to scrub through music, and I'm going through like the top 50 Spotify hits, and the first few bars are like this horrible computer-based pads thing. I'm like, next. But I don't know, somebody's reacting to it, somebody likes that stuff, just not us.
No, because to me, that's the equivalent of, like, I grew up in I'm the son of musicians, and, my dad was a jazz drummer. My grandfather played keyboards and organs and piano, and we had a Kimball, very big Kimball organ in the house.
Wow.
And to me, what that is the equivalent of is me turning on my grandfather's Kimball in 1982 and hitting the bossa nova beat on it, and then just going. Oh
yeah. I'm rocking.
Just rolling with the presets, baby. And people buy it. And that's cool, man. If you can get away with it, good for you. But I don't know if I'd ever be satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, right now. This record was made with 4 or 5 guys, and 4 or 5 guys are going to perform it, and that's it's 4 or 5 humans that are trying to connect, and we're all interacting with each other, and that's the beauty. That's the part of recording I like.
Yeah, there's no AI involved in any of it.
Yeah.
So
no.
And that's what you're hearing is, you're hearing is like me singing for hours until we got it right, and to a point where I wanted to leave. Paul, we would just keep doing it until it was right, instead of we didn't do a lot of pitch correction on the record, and we it was really just me singing the song that I wrote, and Paul giving me notes, and us taking a break, and then me playing with his cat, or or whatever.
Is highly allergic?
Yeah, because I'm super allergic. But it's just me singing it again and again and just doing take after take after take, and until it's right. And Paul said this before, and I think what you're picking up on is it was a well curated record, meaning I didn't just write 10 or 11 songs, then we got together. Like we wrote a lot, and we took a lot of the time between Sun on the Floor and this was deciding what was the best fit, what was the 11 or 12 songs that were best for this record, and how important the sequence was, and the story, and the through line, and how vulnerable we really wanted to be, and I think that's what you're picking up on, and that was pure intention. We wanted to get that through, is that you really wanted to hear me sing the song correctly and fit the song as best as possible, and not do tons of splices, and just sing it until it's right, and even if like my voice cracks a little bit, but maybe that's the take we that we want because of the emotion, because of the vulnerability, the rawness, or whatever, you know.
I'll tell you what, that's what Fugazi would have done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
You know, so yeah, so like lately it now, and it's like, you know, especially with the harder rock stuff happening right now, everyone's pushing, and or you know, and then these metal bands, it's like everyone's like angrier and angrier and angrier. It's like, well, you know, there's more emotions than just that, and I want to put a spotlight on Chris because he's in this spot and he's delivering that. And the other cool thing is he's not trying to sound like anybody. Like there's nobody he can reference to sound like. You know, all these other bands, they're like everyone's vying for that spot to be the epitome of that sound.
Yeah.
And like, you know what? We're just gonna hang a left from everything. And I want to make this a really interesting record. And Chris is, you know, an interesting person, and he's gonna fucking do it.
And I think bringing it back a little bit, I think that's what like renders it such that you guys could pretty much play with any rock-based band and find, you know, some ears.
Oh yeah,
because
no, absolutely.
There's nothing about what you've delivered here that reeks of specificity of genre.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It's certainly rock based.
Yeah.
It certainly fits in with you know, a subset of alternative rock or indie rock, but it's really just, it sits in its own pocket of you know, sonics, and it's not alien, but it's not what's in right now either, and that's what I dig. It has the courage and the self-confidence to be exactly what it wants to be without kowtowing to anyone's tastes or preconceived notions, and I dig the shit out of that.
Yeah. Oh, that's huge. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
If you were to kind of sum up what you wanted the audience at large to take away from this, what would that be?
Take the journey. You know, it's you know, like you're kind of tapping on, like, you know, hey, we weren't trying to kowtow, but you know, that first song was like the ode to like this Americana movement that's kind of happening right now. Just to not make fun of it, but make fun of it.
Yeah.
But because
I love Graham Parsons though.
Yeah.
I mean,
I love the replacements too, man.
yeah,
But
yeah.
So, you know, so you go in there and, you know, I don't know how you first interpreted hearing that first song. Is this whole record going to sound like this?
I didn't think it would.
Okay. But, you know, so you eat it in that way, then it takes, you just start hiking and you're going.
But don't forget, I heard the previous record, so
Oh, okay.
I didn't go in blind. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Sure.
I was already familiar with the
And
material.
that's a trippy record too.
It is, but I really think that this one, as opposed to the last one, has something extra that didn't really occur on the first one, and that being, it is so varied.
You know what? We wanted to make this, and this was my goal. I wanted to make it undeniable. Period.
Mm-hmm. I think
not hits, just undeniable.
I don't think this is a hits record. I think
No.
let's go back to something that's completely unrelated to it. Def Leppard Hysteria. It was full of hits.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But the whole record was the hit, right?
Yeah.
It was designed and tailored to be very appealing, and that's the only thing that makes them similar, because Def Leppard Hysteria is candy.
Yeah.
It's really good candy,
Yeah.
but it's fucking candy.
Yeah.
They're not saying anything. There's no deeper meaning. There's no existential experience, dread, or whatever encapsulated into that piece of confectionery music.
Yeah.
But the whole record's the hit. That's my point. It's meant to be fully experienced, fully listened to, not just, oh, I like that song and that song, but this one and this one. No, it's not. You can tell it's not meant to be that. And
I didn't want it to be background music either.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, what did he say? I wanted those moments to happen. Wait, back up. What did he just say?
Yeah.
And let yourself and chew on it and like, hey, hold on, let's turn this up a little bit. You know, I wanted it to be like that.
Yeah, I mean, I found myself at a few points like, man, yeah, I hope Chris is all right. Like, just like you said, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, man, I hope he's okay. 'Cause shit, it's fucking like, wow. And not in like a death metal way where it's like, you know, he just said that. That's gnarly. But no, it's like, oh, man. Oh, fuck. But it's poignant. And of course you love Graham Parsons, because Graham Parsons very much put that sort of feeling forward, like heart on sleeve, and it's going to get a little messy if you follow me down this road, but ultimately you're going to love me a lot more after you've heard it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I heard the story about Graham where he would he'd walk up on stage and he'd start playing, and like the manager of the bar or restaurant would notice that food isn't getting delivered. It's because all the waitresses would just be crying, and like they're not working because of how beautiful and sad his voice was. And like the manager would have to be like, okay, play something like, you know, more peppy to get my waitresses to start working again.
Go back to the Flying Burrito Brothers stuff. Come on, guys.
Exactly. Yeah. Just the sobbing waitresses.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
So, Chris, what do you want people to take away from this, Chris?
The honesty and the vulnerability, and like Paul said, the journey, the ride. Come join me for 38 minutes, or you know, on the last few years. It's a bit of an apology. And it's also, an homage to the next phase of my life where I'm trying to be more pleasant and more like aware of who I am and how I can be perceived. And I do feel that I have grown. Since the record, I listened to some of the songs. I listened to High Low the other day. We're doing proofs, you know. We're doing the vinyl. We actually are printing the vinyl in the CD, and we had to listen to it. And it had been a while since I listened to High Low, which is the last song on the record. And I got choked up because I felt, man, I'm in a different place than when I wrote this song. And I kind of missed that guy a little bit, but I'm glad I am where I am. And it's a great way to close the record because it shut the door on that period, you know? So I hope people will everyone knows, like, I'm good. I'm all right. We got through it.
We pulled through.
Yeah, I pulled through. We're good. But to go along with me for a little bit, you know, it's a less than 45 minutes. Take the journey, and
it's not going to sound like Amen, Bluebird, or the Kinnison.
Yeah,
and it's it's a brand new thing we're doing.
Right. I can't fit in those old pants. So don't expect me.
Bro.
Yeah. Don't expect me.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm too close to 50 to even consider wearing those pants right now.
Yeah.
But I couldn't, even if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I think I've gotten through everything I wanted to ask of you. But I do want to kind of throw this in there that, I told you I was surprised, pleasantly so, that it was you guys, and that I had remembered you guys from your previous works, and I ran into Paul all those years ago. But how does this, like, I know how it sounds different from what you guys have done in the past, but how does it feel different from back then for you?
Well, so we just started playing recently, and I'm still trying to figure out. Back in Amen, it was just turn the faucets all the way on. That's how I felt in Amen. It was like, all right, I'm going to sprint this marathon the whole way. Bluebird was a little bit more groovy, and there was definitely some heavy moments.
But it was more cerebral.
Out.
It was more cerebral, for sure.
And this is, I am having to learn how to find myself. So I'm on a journey myself, and I'm enjoying it. So it's not in my comfort zone. So it's forcing me to think and push forward because I want to succeed at it.
Yeah, it's different for me because I don't drink anymore. So
yeah, it's the same.
Well, the first Lewis show, I said to our drummer, I was like, I think this is the first show I've played since I was 15 that I wasn't drinking. So it's just different. Again, like I said earlier, it's still natural just being up on stage, but it was nice remembering like what happened, and it was also nice when I walked up stage, like I was pretty sure that no one in the band was mad at me, which is that's different.
Oh, we're gonna have to talk. I want to find out what are these buttons you're pushing.
I mean, I remember going to see the Kinnison, and I mean, there was definitely some chaos involved, but to me, it didn't seem like, you were punching anyone in the dick or whatever on stage, and like,
No, I got punched in the dick a few times, but I didn't. Where did you see Kinnison at?
Definitely in New York. I'm trying to remember where. As full disclosure, I did a ton of drugs back in those days.
Sure.
So, I mean, I don't remember vividly where I'd seen bands, but I always remember the bands. I always remember, kind of sort of what happened around the situations. But I spent so much time away from home, especially being a touring musician myself, that I would see bands like everywhere pretty much. But I know it was definitely in New York.
I wonder if it was Knitting Factory.
Sounds right.
Because
I don't even remember who else played, because I remember I went to see the Kinnison, and that was like my intent. For some reason, Garrison comes to mind, but I don't think that's right.
We played New York quite a bit, but the Knitting Factory shows, we were on tour with Poison the Well.
That makes sense.
Yes, and we did back-to-back nights at Knitting Factory, 2 shows in a row, and the first show, we got booed off the stage. Like the crowd hated us so much. And the second night, I forgot that we were signed to Atlantic at the time, and I forgot that our entire A&R, our US based AR crew was going to be there to see us. And I took mushrooms before the show, and I fried so much. Like, I remember looking up and seeing our A&R guy, thinking, this was the wrong fucking day to do this. This is not a good idea. And I didn't tell it. I wore Captain Jack spandex pants, like as a joke, and a leopard turtleneck, as like a fuck you to the crowd the night before. We killed it. It was like one of the best shows of the tour.
That was the night I saw.
We killed it. We did so well. I remember, like, you know, the vice president of Atlantic came up to me. He's like, "You know who you remind me of? A young when like the Who was young." And I was like, "What the fuck is this guy talking about?" Like, I'm crying right now. I'm crying so hard. So if you saw that show, that was great. I'm glad you didn't see the one the night before.
I didn't see anyone react badly to you, so that was definitely the show, and it was definitely Poison the Well, because I was always a pretty sizable fan of what they did as well, especially later. Their early stuff was cool, but they got very artsy later on, and I appreciated that.
Yeah.
But what the Kinnison did was, you know, I can't understand why anyone would not have liked it, because it was so much in the wheelhouse of what, you know, Orchid and a lot of those like early screamo bands were trying to push towards, with the combination of melody and ferocity. You guys did so very well. And while I don't know why people would have been mad. I really don't get it. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was kind of hard to finish, you know. Refused had broken up, and At the Drive-In had broken up. So we were touring like Warped Tour and Poison the Well, and we did a lot of tours that didn't necessarily match, like, you know, we weren't a great fit. And we would just go up there and rip everyone's face off and each other's faces, and then everyone just hated us. You know, I got kicked off of that Poison the Well tour 4 times. Yeah, and you have to remember that Poison the Well and the Kinnison had the same manager. So,
you were on the same label.
Same label, same manager, same booking agent.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, but and also like we were mismatched. We did 2 Warped Tours in a row. You know, like the whole Warped Tours. You know, we're not like Ladwagon. You know, we're not like MXPX.
Yeah.
And you know, we would end up like, I don't know, getting beat up by Tiger Army or something. You know, like, you know, it'd be like, this is the punk rock tour. Like, why is everyone so uptight and corporate and fucking acting so weird? And then all of a sudden, like, I'd find out, like, oh, the guy from Tiger Army beat you up last night. Like, oh, that's
Nick,
not very punk
beat
rock.
you up?
I don't know who it was, but I couldn't. I know that Tim Armstrong saved my life that night.
Tim Armstrong hates my guts. Just a little asides. Tim Armstrong hates my guts. Hates my guts.
He doesn't like me anymore either, so we're good.
He doesn't like me one bit. He'll
get over it.
He will get over it. He's got the money, but basically, the band that I'm still like in, we're very much like street punk oriented, and we got drunk one night, and I have a Tim Armstrong impression that is so spot on. It's disgusting.
Oh yes.
And I did this very long form extrapolation of Tim Armstrong and his documentaries that he narrated for Vice.
Sure.
You know, the history of hardcore, the history of like ska, stuff like that. But I was talking about New York hardcore and straight edge, and how, like, you know, the vegan militia was after him for printing a 7-inch on someone's bones, and like it was ridiculous. And I was making fun of him for being like wearing Versace suits and stuff. And for some reason, one of the guys from an Oi band that Lars Fredriksson was in showed it to Tim. Tim got mad at me, and my band missed a bunch of opportunities because of it.
Yeah.
They're the ones that posted it online, not me.
Jeez.
I was just a performer.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you deserve. That's what you get.
That's what I get, right?
Yeah. Both. Yeah. On the One Warped Tour, it was Transplants and then Lars and the Bastards. So they were together, but not Rancid, you know. And after I got my ass kicked Lars and Tim did an intervention with me, like in catering, and they're like, "Dude, you have to stop drinking." And I thought, what did I do in my life like to deserve this? What path did I take? I'm like just trying to like eat a salad, you know, like it's 106 degrees out in Fort Lauderdale in a parking lot, and I have like, the guys from Rancid fucking telling me to quit drinking.
Wow.
Uh,
Pot meet kettle.
yes.
Wow.
Well, we figured
Yeah.
out a lot tonight, gentlemen,
Yeah.
and
We did.
not the least of which is I probably should have been in LA with you guys a long time ago because we fit right in with one
Yeah.
another.
Well, hey, next time you're in LA, come on down.
I would love to. That'd be great.
Where are you, Peter?
I'm in Scranton, Pennsylvania.
Oh,
right
okay.
on. Okay.
The unfortunate place of my birth.
Do you know this band Golden?
Yeah.
My friend just got married to the guitar player in Golden.
Oh, no
My
kidding.
wife was just out there this last weekend.
I'm surprised she didn't come back with something that won't wash off.
Oh no, yeah, she was representing. So the wedding was at a camp place, and she went with Allison Wolf and it was just John Theodore was there. They did some Golden tunes. It was awesome.
Oh, that's great.
Wow.
I missed it because I was doing it my day job.
Yeah, this place, it's you know how you said that, Chris, where you're from is very isolated. It's the same here. I'm not from Scranton proper, but from a very tiny suburb thereof that's very rural. The only reason I was able to find everything I was able to find musically was the thing called the tape trade, which you'd go in the back of magazines and people would list what they had and what their wants were of different underground bands.
Wow.
So you would become pen pals with this person. They would say, I want this. If you can get me this, that, and this, we can send it to one another on tape, and you'd end up with third, fourth, fifth generation cassette tape of like Gizm
so cool.
records and gauze, like a lot of Japanese hardcore and like very interesting stuff that sounded really bad. But
Right. yeah. A copy of a copy of a copy.
Pretty much. And but that's how we did it back then. That's why I am so jealous of the era you got to come of age in, because it wasn't that laborious to find your way. You know what I mean? But
no, lots of LimeWire.
Yeah. I would get like this, like we'll be at a punk show, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. It's like, have you never seen them? I'm like, no. It's like, you didn't have this when you were a kid. I'm like, when I was a kid, I was like, I had a troubled, upbringing. It's like, between stepfathers trying to, beat my mom. It's like, no, I didn't have money for that. I didn't get to do those things. But, it's like the music I did get attached to were, what my friends would tape or if they had, or if we'd all pool together and pass tapes around. But that was so cool. That's a cool idea. We somehow never dropped into that, passing tapes around to have a tape club.
Well, that's
super cool.
That was a big underground thing, the tape trade.
Mm-hmm.
It's of some note, I guess, in this day and age where people talk about it. But it was that, and college radio was a big deal, a very big deal. And the best shows were always on super late at night. And of course, being from the sticks like myself, I had to take some very thick speaker wire and run it into the antenna port in my stereo and hang out my bedroom window and find just the right spot to tape it to the outside of my window so I can pick up the station from the big city, Scranton, the big city, and kind of pull in that signal and then tape the whole show. And a lot of times I would spend literal years trying to figure out where these songs came from, because the DJ was some stone college kid and didn't announce, musician, record, song.
Yeah.
But exposure is exposure is exposure.
Mm-hmm.
All of this to say, it doesn't matter when you were born or how you found it. It's the fact that you're here now with all of us, enjoying these things and preaching the gospel of all that is great about this thing we call music. And you guys are a phenomenal example of the sum of those parts. And I really, really want people to hear this record. I hope all of my listeners listen to it, buy it, get the vinyl, buy the t-shirt, do the whole thing, because there's so few of us left that still believe in the sanctity and the gospel that is great music.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank
same
you,
here.
Peter.
We only do what we can do and the best we can do, and that'd be great.
On that note, gentlemen, I will let you go because I don't want to keep you all night. I can go on all night, but we all have lives.
We can do this again.
I would love to do it again. I would love to do it again.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, Peter, real quick.
Yeah.
Congratulations on your 100th episode. You just put
Oh,
that out recently, right?
Yeah,
that's incredible. So cool, man. That's a great milestone.
You guys will be 105 when this comes out.
I love it.
And as a side thing too, what I'm going to do with this episode is once I edit it together, plug in some of your music into the body of the work itself, I'm going to set it up so that on release day, this comes out. So this is like the record release kind of show, right?
Amazing.
As long as you guys are cool with me including the music into the body of the work, we're all set.
No problem.
So
absolutely, of course,
I can make it like part of the marketing. And Tim is your publicist, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Tim's one of my best friends. I love.
Yeah, he's doing a great job, and it was such a fluke. And I love that we landed in his lap, and he gets it like he heard it, and he was like, first he was like, oh yeah, this power pop band, and he was like, wait a second, no.
Yeah, it's not power pop. I mean, it's power pop as Matthew Sweet's Son of Altered Beast was power pop, maybe. Which it was there. It was there. It had aspects, but no, there was something more going on. There was a yearning and a call to the ethereal involved, and that's what I'm hearing. And man, I'm so excited for you guys. And
I'm excited. Thank you.
Thank you for being.
Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Believe me. So I will.
All right.
Reach out to me. You know how to find me.
Yes.
We'll do this again.
All right. We're signing off from the West Coast.
Take it easy, guys.
See ya.
Take care.
Later.